I needed this. I needed to do this for myself. There were so many little pieces of trauma that were just sort of left in my brain that would trip me up and ruin my day if I smelled something that reminded me of chemo, or if I, heard a noise that was a noise that I'd last heard during radiation month. Like, I needed something to put all of that outside of me, to give me a shield, so that this is the first thing I think of when I smell those smells or hear those sounds. This gives me the power over that trauma. I highly recommend it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Creativity Worth Expressing. I'm your host, Ryan Anthony Hernandez, and today we have a special guest. Our guest for today is Robin McFadden. Welcome to the show, Robin. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. I've been very busy looking for people to come on this podcast because it's still very new. So thank you, first of all, for agreeing to be here.
Oh, absolutely. I've been looking forward to it all week.
Awesome. So to get us started, can you share with the audience what is your form or forms of creativity?
I'm a visual artist. I do a lot of painting in acrylics and watercolors and India inks. I also do sculpt figurines and do a lot of collage. My I'm always looking for whatever I see in my head. What's the best way to bring that to life? So I'm not above trying anything new. Right now, I'm working on a children's book, and I'm trying the Eric Carle method. So I'm painting whole pieces of paper and then cutting them out and making my shapes that way.
For you, was there like a moment or maybe a experience that sparked your interest and love for creativity?
Oh, I was born wanting to paint. And I was about 7 years old when I told my parents that I wanted to take singing lessons and art lessons. And they said we can't afford both. We were poor. We were poorer than I knew. But they said we can afford one. Which one do you choose? So at 7, I was like, I need art lessons. I'm going to be an artist when I grow up. I'm going to be rich and famous and change the world. And that's been the goal ever since. Um, Even if I've gotten kind of hijacked along the way. I had my first kid when I was 21, so I sort of ended up doing the parenting thing. Turns out parenting and full-time art is a lot harder
Hmm.
than you expect it to be.
Was there ever a moment where you regretted choosing art over singing?
Not so much because I can still sing well, and I took choir in high school and stuff. One of the one of the quirks in my personality that I've had to work around my whole life is that sometimes I want to be seen, sometimes I want to be visible, and sometimes I vehemently do not. I don't want anyone to look at my process or my God, I just want to be invisible. And you can't do that if you're a performing artist. You have
Hmm.
to be comfortable with being visible if you're a singer. At least that's what it always seemed to me. Like if you're a visual artist, you can kind of hide in your cave, and
Yes.
that's what I do in those days.
Did your art career flow or was there ever a stop?
It was absolutely no gaps. I got on the strength of my drawings, I got summer, oh, what do you call those? It's not a loan, it's a grant, whatever. I got
Hmm.
to go to the local art school, Bemis, which is attached to the Fine Arts Center. When I was 12 years old, I sold my first painting. And I went to the Colorado Art Institute, which is now defunct, but I've whatever other jobs I've had, I've also been an artist at the same time. There's never been a time when I let that go. And it's funny because every so often you get, if it's been a long time since you've had a success, you look at what you're doing and go, maybe I should stop. Maybe it's time to give up. Maybe I give this, my best shot and it failed. And every time I felt that way, like a random stranger in a grocery store or a coffee shop will come up to me and be like, by the way, don't ever stop. Like I bought your postcard, or I'm looking over your shoulder and seeing your doodles. You're an artist, you need to keep doing. So I feel like that's almost a message
Mm.
from the powers, like, okay, okay, I'll keep doing this.
And you said you sold your first art piece at what age?
12.
12. And what was that art piece?
We were studying Matisse, and we were all supposed to do a Matisse style interior. So it was an not impressionism, almost like early cubism, bright colors, bold outlines. I did a chair and a table by a window, and someone saw that hanging up in the um they did a display at the end of every unit, like, this is what our students are up to. Someone saw it and loved it enough to buy it for $25, which was a lot in 1993.
How did your art evolve from 12 to, let's say, college? How did you see it evolve from that period?
I got really into fantasy art. I wanted to make imaginary things live, and dragons, Pegasi, unicorns. I was a high school dropout because we moved to a small town. And so I went from a very large high school with lots of friends and lots of culture to a really small one that was really kind of hateful and unpleasant. And my mom could see that I was in about the worst state she'd ever seen me. And then she was like, how about you just, like, you know the material. How about you get your GED and get the hell out of there? Because they're going to kill you. Like, I, I love people. I've always loved people. I've always made friends easily. And just this once during the high school move, suddenly I couldn't make friends and I was wilting. Um, so partying and playing with the homeschoolers after I dropped out and got my GED and was done with the hateful people, I started playing with people who were incredibly creative, and we drew so many winged horses, Pegasi, that we started like pretending we had a ranch and breeding the drawings. Like we would try to figure out what the genetics would be if we took these two and made them parents. I love being around creative people.
No, that sounds like a very interesting art project that y'all were working on together and kind of mutating or merging your projects together. That's pretty cool.
It was beautiful. We did dragons as well and griffins. But I mean, by the time we were done with the Pegasus, we had something like 200 drawings. It was a solid ranch.
So, were you inspired by any fantasy books or fantasy movies to
Oh,
bring these ideas to your mind?
oh, all of them. Oh, yes. Yes, Willow Labyrinth. Brian Froud is my favorite artist to this day. He's just such a rich palette of forms that he's always using in different ways all the time. And yeah, I wanted to be like Brian Froud. I never wanted to like make things hyper realistic. I never wanted to make my paintings look like photos because that's what photos are for in my little brain. I wanted to make things visible that couldn't exist.
You said something about you being around hateful people, but
Yeah.
then you left that, I guess, environment, and now you're talking about being with creative people. Can you walk us through how is that uh, how do the people around you affect your creativity?
It's funny, isn't it, that the people around you will either bring out the best in you or not.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, when you're around people who are judging you for any reason, like in my case, I was into Star Wars. That was so not cool. And I was kind of an urbanite with weird fuzzy boots, and like I was just weird, just a straight little white woman weirdo. Nothing different about me in the except my brain. And they treated me so poorly. Like they just didn't like me. They didn't understand me and they didn't want to. And I withered. And I think um, that experience gave me a lot of empathy for people who have to go through that for other reasons. Like, you can't be your best self or your most creative self when you just feel like other people's judgment is eating you from the outside. You just want to hide.
When you started creating, was there judgment in your while you were doing paintings? Like if you were to look back at your paintings during that time or your doodles, like can you kind of see it for you at least?
Yeah. There were two different styles that I engaged in during those times. And there was the stuff that you do in order to feel accepted, like little baby dragons. I would draw little baby dragons, and then the mean people would be like, "Oh, I love the baby dragons," and they'd be, nicer to you temporarily. But on in my private notebooks, yeah, it was dark. There were nasty, like sad children in dark backgrounds with scribbles and all. The creativity, um, visual arts can give you a voice for all those emotions that you don't know how to express otherwise.
Like I was looking at your website, it we can see that the you really continued growing. So I would like to kind of start getting into the growth because we were talking about how the people around you brought out the best out of you. Uh,
Yeah.
can you tell us some stories about like how it was being around creative people?
Oh man, it was the best. And I was young enough when I met. So, um, Kit and Corey were the main kids we hung out with, and there was Anne and a couple of others. And I was too young to understand how amazing our dynamic was because I've been through a lot of friendships and relationships and never found quite the same level of have you ever been in an improv group or around improv people, like the yes and attitude? They'll never shame you, they never tell you that your idea is bad, you're allowed to explore anything with them and you're safe.
Yes.
We did all of the things. We built a Chinese dragon for the town Earth Day parade out of cardboard and sheets and paint, and we cooked together for years. After I left college and came home and was really worn out, everyone was still there. So my sibling too. I didn't mention that because they're always in my, uh, they've always got my back. We cooked every week, big meals for big groups. We did the Pegasi, the dragons. We invented a television show about a pair of um, girls who investigated crimes. Like it was just everything was on the table, and it was so much fun. It was, yeah. We invented a kingdom. I was 17 and inventing kingdoms, and it was definitely the best part of that chunk of time. Yeah. Um, you seek that out once you have it, like, and we all parted ways. Some of them live in Massachusetts now, whatever, but you seek out that dynamic because now you know what true friendship and creative collaboration feels like, and you look for it, like who else might have this, who else might I be able to be this kind of a friend to. It's kind of rare.
So now I wanted to hit on one of your projects. It's up on your website, and that is you have like a little twist on the periodic table.
Yes.
I
Yes.
wanted to I want to hear all about it. Can you tell us what that is?
All right. So it started with a shower curtain. We got Are you familiar with the Big Bang Theory?
I've never watched it, but I'm familiar with it.
There's a shower curtain with the periodic table on it, and I saw
Okay.
that and I went, I want that. So Jason found me one and we hung it up. And for years I was just like, haha, cute. And then one day I was like, I'm dissatisfied with this because I don't know anything about it. So I started to do some research, and it was dry. And it wasn't finding anything to latch onto in my head. Like, you learn all the things about aluminum, but they just slide right away because it was boring to me,
Hmm.
frankly. Like, the concepts were so fascinating, but the nitty gritty was so boring. And I was like, if if these were people, it'd be so much easier to remember everything about them. And then I was like, oh, I could paint them as characters. And and I did, like, hydrogen dropped into my head in that moment, completely finished. All I had to do was try and paint what I could see in my mind. And she's winged because she's a gas. She's pregnant because everything comes from hydrogen. And she's wearing a big sword on her back because hydrogen is so dangerous. And I'm like, so these are like the traits of the element you can learn by knowing what it looks like as these fantasy creatures. Um, I can show you
Yes.
because no one I know has a wall big enough to hang them up. So they're just hanging in their groups right over there.
Crazy. That's awesome.
Yep. And I have all sorts of little codes and things. Like I said, the reactive gases are all fairies, the noble gases are all dragons, the alkali metals are all trolls, the alkali earth metals are goblins, the rare earths that bar down at the bottom are frogs and toads. Like the top row is lanthanides and they're frogs, and the bottom row is actinides and they're toads. And then I had to do a deep dive into herpetology to figure out exactly what toad would be most appropriate for each of these things. And somewhere in there, because I like mysticism, because that's a place where my soul finds food, I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if if each one had like a metaphysical trait, just something intangible, and then I could write on that, like to write a book in
Ooh.
which for each page, for each element, there's science, sure, but there's also like how to interpret this as a mystical thing, so people could use it instead of tarot. Um, and the funny part, the punchline is that for years I've wanted to do a tarot deck, and it's just too much work. It's like 70 something cards and 70 something paintings seemed like way too much work. But the moment I conceived of this, I was willing to do 118 cards.
But it's amazing what you've done though.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, I've got the cards right here. Like, we aren't a radio show. I can show you. Ugh. I sell them at cons these days until I run out, because in order to publish them as cards, I I had to have the capital to go to a printer. I got 250 decks done. I had to get 100 pre-orders to get 250 decks done. And now I'm down to like my last 20 or 30.
Okay, wow.
So
So
I'm going to need to come up with capital to do more. Unfortunately, I couldn't save the capital that I was making because it costs money to get booths at cons. They've been paying for themselves, but they haven't been paying for a new deck. Like there's copper, the noble gases, or sorry, the noble metals all have this silhouette. Um, Iodine will diffuse into this purplish gas, so I thought that would be a fun thing to show on him. All of the ones that are liquid at room temperature and normal pressure are merfolk. And the cards also have like the crystal structure, the Bohr model, the spectrum signature, and the atomic weight on them. So you could
yeah.
actually like ignore all the mysticism stuff and just use it as a flashcard deck.
Well, I think for me, well, honestly, like looking at the periodic table, I never memorized. I didn't care to memorize. It was too boring, and I was thinking, what the hell is the point of doing this shit? But if I were to go back to high school and okay, like have a little card, I think it'll register more to my memory and give like a reason, kind of like a story where it's more accessible for my brain because I think you said it so uh, perfect how like you would hear the information and it would just like slide right out of your head. It's like my brain don't want it, my brain don't care about it.
Don't care. But now the magic of this is that not only is each character like a person in my head who lives there rent free, and I can call them up and conjure up their imagery and therefore their information really easily, new information sticks. Like
Mm.
I painted actinium, as a frog who's sitting on a rock, and it's one of the rocks that actually contains actinium. So you can like the manzanite, I think is what it's called. And he's sitting there like this because he's like, because you don't use actinium for much of anything. It's just a radioactive thing. And I was like, okay, stubbornness. It doesn't move, it doesn't decay very fast, but it's not useful. It's just kind of there. And at some point within the last couple of years, somebody was like, did you know that they're using actinium? Or experimenting with actinium as a cancer treatment. And I was like, well, I didn't know that, but now I do because I can picture that guy being
Mm.
useful in cancer treatments. It sticks. I am so happy I did it for my own sake, and I've heard rumors that it works in other people's heads too, not just mine.
And so let me get this right. So it's divided between trolls, dragons, fairies, what else?
Well, if you can picture the periodic table, there's a block in the middle that's called the D block or the transition metals. So each of those columns has chemical similarities within the columns.
Mm.
Um, the chemical similarities are related to how many electrons are in their outermost shell, right? So because they have chemical similarities, I gave each of them their own like family traits. So there's 10 rows of four. And I've got a row that are the amphibian people, the rare earths. I've got some reptile people, so titanium and zirconium, those guys, hafnium. Those are all like anthropomorphic reptiles. And we've got a family of um, marsupials and one of mammals and one of hobbits. I've got the manganese. In fact, we were just looking at manganese with his big basket. He's a hobbit. So his family are hobbits. We've got gnomes, dwarves, and leprechauns as well. Like the family that belongs to iron are all uh, dwarfs. And then there's certain things like there's a chunk in the middle of six elements that aren't in the same column, but they have enough chemical similarity that they're called the platinum family. And the platinum group is used in catalytic converters. So I made sure there was a hexagonal pattern on their clothing so that you'd know, because catalytic converters have a honeycomb structure on their interior. So if you can picture a dwarf wearing a gown with a honeycomb pattern on it, you know that's platinum. and and then you get into the big thing here, and those are all kind of elf-like people. They mostly just look like people but with big pointy ears. I grew up on Elf Quest. Big pointy ears really speaks to me.
So, so I love how like you got the periodic table and you made your whole universe. It's like it's a universe. But if you had to choose, and maybe for the audience, can you like pick maybe three that you would say, yeah, you just have to just share and talk about it?
Oh, so manganese that we just brought up. He's a hobbit. Manganese is used to sequester oxygen in all sorts of processes. Your body uses it to get rid of free radicals, and like in industry, they use it for the exact same thing to make sure that um, oxygen isn't getting into your alloys or compounds. So he's wearing a little cluster of soda cans to remind you that the soda cans have manganese in them. And he's got this basket and he's gathering up butterflies. I don't know how obvious or how clear that is.
Yes.
The butterflies have Arctic blue butterfly wings because oxygen in this deck is a fairy with Arctic blue butterfly wings, wherever he is. Let's see if we can find him. That's one of the problems with there being 118. I'm like, maybe I should have set these aside. We got lucky. There he is. There's oxygen
Look at that.
sitting on a tree because trees provide oxygen, wearing his clouds. He's got fire and water, neither of which could exist without him. Every one of the paintings has the symbol, the letters somewhere
Mm.
within the painting. So if you can picture the painting, you can remember the symbol if you've got a pretty good memory. The other thing about him is he's a satyr. Everyone in Oxygen's column is a satyr. And that also makes it easy to remember those guys because otherwise, how would you know that selenium and sulfur and um, I can't remember who else at the moment, but I can't look and remember at the same time, darn it. Polonium. Hang on. You notice the background colors change. The
Yes.
background colors show you what period it's in. I'd love to talk about neodymium too, because this was one of those moments of kismet. This whole so it took me a year and a half to do the paintings, another year and a half to do the writing, and I kept running into moments of again like the universe saying this is the right thing to be doing. You're on the right track. And in this case, I was like, okay, neodymium needs to be a frog that has something to do with attraction. His meaning is attraction because magnets, it's not that hard. I wasn't trying to make it complicated. So I went and looked for frogs that have unusual mating behaviors. The Indian bullfrog literally changes color during mating season, goes from camouflaged to this day glow yellow with indigo throat sacs. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a thing. I also tried to include kind of the magnetic field around him in his background,
Yes.
make it very clear.
And
And he's in Roman armor because
okay.
although the Lanthanides are in Roman armor, the Actinides are in Mongol armor. It just needed to be something to denote the fact that they work as a group a lot of the time. Like they don't, most of the time, you don't separate these. They come out of the mine in chunks. And even though you can separate them, it's expensive. So many times they don't. But when they do, and you get neodymium, it's a magnet. And the other fun thing about neodymium that I learned much later is that if you get a little bit of neodymium impurity in glass, the glass will change color depending on the temperature of light that's hitting it drastically, like yellow to purple. And I was like, so my color changing frog is my color changing element. And I didn't know that when I painted.
So, so when you did this, do you think that you learned more from doing this style than back in the day in school?
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, yeah. I wish I'd had these back in school. I would have written stories about them. That's one of the dreams. Like I've got it this far. I've got this Oracle deck. It exists and it's real, and that's already pretty miraculous. But if I was to see other artists painting these characters in their own style, coming up with a metal alloy and painting them as an adventuring party, that would make my day. If I heard that someone had bought this deck and was using it to build a D&D campaign, that would
Ooh,
also be get me right here, man. And if I ever saw someone cosplaying as any of these, I might just ascend to the next level of consciousness from the joy of it.
but
Like the frogs would be difficult, but look at Cobalt in his little Nomi blue outfit.
yeah,
Like, and somewhere, so I have in Manganese's family, we have other hobbits, rhenium here, used in jet engine turbines because it is very, very resistant to heat and pressure. Let's see. Somewhere I have, well, I mean, I wouldn't mind wearing this if I was ever to cosplay as one of them.
there you
Doesn't that look
go.
comfy? And that's the honeycomb pattern I was talking about.
Oh yeah.
Iridium does exist in the platinum group. I know a woman who actually promised that she would eventually come to a con in an arsenic costume.
That looks amazing.
Does it though? I
It
went and found
does.
wallpaper patterns from the Paris green wallpaper craze of the 1900s that was killing people. I don't know
Mm.
if you ever read about that.
No, I never read about it.
There's a beautiful, vibrant green paint that is an arsenical compound. And people were making wallpaper out of it. And green wallpaper was a huge craze. People were getting sick because it was off gassing arsenic into the rooms.
Uh-oh.
And so, yeah, If you read of anyone dying of consumption in Victorian England, that
That
might have
was
been part of it. Here's one of my trolls,
okay. Look at that. What is she holding?
a ham,
A ham. Why ham?
because she's sodium.
Ah, I see.
And because the alkali metals they burst into flames when you throw them in water, I made sure the hair was the same color as the flames that you get.
So you really thought this out. I mean,
I'm
like
a giant nerd.
really.
Oh, the ones that look like they're glowing, those that's because they're radioactive.
Okay, and look at that one with the
He-
horse and
He's one of those mammal people I talked about.
yes.
Molybdenum is used in high pressure situations, both as a alloyed in metal and as a lubricant. Molybdenum lubricant does not seize under extreme conditions. Um, Bismuth's armor is another one that would be really cool to see in real life.
Oh man. And have you
And
cosplayed yet?
no, not as one of
Uh,
my own characters.
I mean,
I
that would
think
be
I,
pretty cool,
oh, it would. It'd be
like
so much fun. Oh, there's another troll as the first of the trolls. Good old lithium.
he looks like he's meditating.
Yep. Lithium is used in brain chemistry drugs to help you calm the fuck down.
Okay.
Yeah, they're each one I was trying like a big goal was to make each one so memorable that it really would be recognizable no matter where you saw it. It wouldn't have to be in this posture or in this deck. It um could be
But
anywhere.
and
That
that's
was one of
fascinating.
the reasons for putting armor on the frogs too. Like anyone could draw a frog, but if it's wearing a little Roman helmet, you know it's one of these guys.
Yeah, so you put so much thought even in the poses that they're making. How was it for you as an artist trying to capture like the movements and how did you do all that?
It was so hard not to fall into the trap of just drawing them as if I was doing someone's character design for a game. Um, I tried to make sure they were all dynamic and I just kept that at the forefront. Like some of them I had to do more than once. Um, we passed her, so I know she's in here. The um the card for aluminum I had to paint twice because she looked so stilted. She wasn't she she needed to be dancing. Aluminum dances. It's easier to recycle aluminum than to get it from ore in the first place. It's of all of the recyclables we have, it's the one that wants to transform. And I was like, she needs to look like she's enjoying that, like she's moving.
Oh, it's
And so yeah, I
fascinating.
have a failed painting of her somewhere that I was like, nope, not good enough. And at
So,
the same time, silver is nice and still, that there had to be variation, I think, for it to be memorable.
wow, well, thank you for sharing. I mean, because this is something that really requires not just the painting, but also the research and the study, and just uh, you're making a story with the periodic table. You're making it super interesting and something that even I wouldn't be surprised that maybe down the line, maybe even schools would be interested in having as like a maybe an aid to help students memorize these things.
One of the requests that I get at cons from kids in the like 11 to 14 range, and a few of them have said this. They were like, cut the mysticism, make the cards smaller, put the relevant information on the back, and make it a trading card game. We want a trading card game. We want to be able to build compounds and then like beat other people's compounds with our compounds. We want a game. And I was like, that's so cool. And it's that one's way outside my wheelhouse. I need a game designer involved in that one. But I know I'll find one. We talked earlier about finding creative people
Yeah,
and how many possibilities open up when you do. So
well, maybe someone's gonna find you on Instagram, or maybe someone's gonna see this and be like, "Hey, hey, I'm a game designer. Hey, let's collaborate. Let's
let's
do
do it.
this."
Let's do it. Yeah, it would be very successful. I need that level up. Oh, and I wanted to give a shout out. So Theodore Gray is, in fact, it's right here. Theodore Gray is an element collector and science communicator, and he's very, very well known for this book, among others. And this was my Bible. This thing,
Okay.
because unlike Wikipedia or any other online resource, he actually tells you what's particularly special about each of the elements, like the thing that sets it completely apart. And that was what I needed to seed these paintings. And when I was about halfway through, I went and contacted him through his website, and I was just like, I hope you don't mind that I'm doing this, because there's a little bit of woo woo in my fantasy mysticism version. But I will also wanted to thank you for making it possible, because I don't think I could have figured it out without your book. And he wrote back and gave me his blessing and said, make it as woo woo as you want to, honey. And he liked, I sent him some of the art. He was like, this art is great. Well done. So I
That's
was like,
great.
I have a blessing from on high. And even better, I decided I needed, so the spectrum signature is this little colored column over here, right?
Mhm.
The If you have a pure sample of an element and you heat it up until it's emitting light, it always emits light in the same pattern, in the same wavelengths. So it's like a fingerprint. There's even some elements where um, scientists discovered them by heating up a compound that had something unknown in it and spotted a color that they hadn't
Mm.
seen before. Cesium was named for the sky blue color in its spectrum signature. So it's an important part of the whole history of everything. I
So-
couldn't find I couldn't find these bars anywhere, except in this book. And I was, they're over here somewhere, I think.
Oh yes.
So I wrote to Theodore Gray and said, "Do you know where I could find like a free version of the spectrum signature? Because I can't find it online." And he said, "Oh, you could go ahead and use mine," and sent me a zip file.
That's great.
Right?
Yeah.
So technically, we've collaborated.
So how many decks do you have left available where people can get one?
25, I think. Uh,
25.
yeah. Yeah, and I have a booth at Fan Expo this year, so I want to make sure I have some for that. Or maybe that would be a good place to get people to sign up for pre-orders. I don't know.
Mm.
But yeah, yeah, get them while they exist.
Get them, get it while it's still hot.
Yeah.
And hopefully it'll be hot forever. I mean, that's the goal. I mean, it can be very educational. And I wanted to ask, like, when people get a deck, does it also come with like a little guide,
A what?
like a guide, like breaking it down?
Oh, not just a little guide, a big guide.
Okay, I didn't know. Like,
Yeah.
show us that.
So
Show us this book.
the elemental number shows up in this upper corner, so they're really easy to find. And you go to that page, and here is the facts. It's not much in the way of science. It's like the history and uses.
Mhm.
Because when you get into the science and you start learning about valence electrons and all sorts of stuff, I feel like you need a grounding in, the how it was named, who discovered it, what it's used for, that sort of thing, where it is in the table, its boiling points and stuff. And then this side is more the storytelling. And down at the bottom is a sort of, if you're reading this as a deck, here is the advice this card is giving you.
So
And
can someone get the book by itself, or does it only come if you get the deck?
as far as I'm concerned, you have to get them both, because I mean, and it's got like how to read the cards and all of the different codes if you want to know in the introduction. But if you really, really just wanted the book, it does exist on Amazon. I do all my printing, my publishing through, it used to be Create Space. It's Kindle Direct Publishing now. Um, I published my first book 13 years ago through CreateSpace, but then they got absorbed by Amazon,
Hmm.
and I just haven't bothered to change because I like their interface. It's very user friendly.
So now I wanted to jump into another category of creativity, and I think you've already touched on it, and that is writing books. And you said that you wrote your first book 14 years ago, and I see you're still actively working on this form of creativity, which is writing. Uh, can you walk us through your creative works when it comes to writing?
Yes, yes. In fact, I've got that here too. Hang on. Ugh. So this is the Solstice Badger. This was my
Okay.
first book. Um, and I it's this illustrated beast fable about how we got seasons because the sun was lonely and one day a badger found him and they became best friends. But then, the sun was spending too much time with his friend and the winter came and they realized their mistake and went to consult with the pine tree, who is very wise. And she said that the great mother will make sure half the year is summer for the creatures and half the year is winter so that the sun can see his friend. And that's how we got seasons. And that's why we decorate pine trees in the winter and get gifts from the solstice badger.
Yeah,
It
that's
was
in-
for my children because I wanted them to, well, I mean, because we fill badger bags on the solstice and I wanted them to have a reason for that. But I have a lot of like pagan mom friends who said, okay, but there's eight. I don't know if you knew this. There's eight high holy days in the pagan year. There's the two solstices and the two equinoxes, and then four other things in between those. And the other moms were like, are you going to write books for all of them? And I was like, yeah, but give me a minute. Or 13 years. I've got the second one made and published. This one is about the spring equinox. And eventually, like they're all the same size, so eventually they'll just be a nice set you can buy for your pagan mom friends and
and
it'll
this
work.
was all illustrated by you, of course.
Yeah. And we were talking earlier about how I'm always trying different things. This was a colored pencil job, but then I wanted to show that when the hair is really cut loose, even the style of the art changes. It gives them balance. Dancing brings them balance. They don't have to be calm all the time. They can learn um, how to romp. And so that was a totally different style for me. I wanted folk art. I wanted a little village that was softly colored and charming looking, sort of place you'd want to live. Yeah, I don't have the other six done, but I have them started.
I mentioned earlier, I brought up, I was asking you about if you have a cancer story, if that was you, and you confirmed that yes. And I recently heard that you also wrote a book kind of touching on this. Can you share the book and what is the title?
This is how we process a cancer survivor's art book memoir. So this was a different process from the elements or the children's books. This was um oh so in 2018 I was really really tired and I assumed I was just getting old. My diet must be messed up. I was living in brain fog all the time. And then one day I was like, something's really wrong. It's seriously wrong with me. And if I don't fix it, I'm going to die. So, went to doctors, got tests, and yeah, I had stage 3B rectal cancer. I had a 6 centimeter tumor in me that was beginning to metastasize. And and I was put through the ringer, like 6 rounds of chemo over the course of 4 months, and then ovarian transposition surgery, and then 25 rounds of radiation over the course of 5 weeks, and then um, surgeries, surgery to remove what was left of the tumor because all of that worked really pretty well. But then it was hard, and I saved all the medical paperwork. I had a big stack of the paperwork from all of the doctor's appointments, all of the oncology appointments, all of the scans, all of the scopes, all of everything. I saved it. And a few years later, when I was ready to deal with it, because keep in mind it took a year. Spring of 2018 to spring of 2019 was my fight, and then I was all clear. And so I spent 2019 celebrating, like you do, because I had energy for the first time in years, and I did a road trip and Burning Man and all of the things, and it was like, yay. And I was like, I will settle down now and process my trauma. And then lockdown started.
Oh, yes.
I was like, I'm not processing old trauma while the world's on fire. That is not happening. Like, nothing could be less important to me right then. So I set that as just on the back burner in my head. And actually, what I did during lockdown was the Mendelevian Oracle. Much, much more engrossing without being in any way emotionally draining. It was perfect. But in spring of 23, I was like, okay, I'm 4 years out. We were in the eye of the storm at that point because the world wasn't currently in in crisis mode. I did not see current times coming then. I thought we were in the clear. I wish I'd been right. But so what I did was I took the cancer paperwork and I turned it into art. Underneath each of these pages, like there's explanatory pages and an introduction and stuff, but underneath this art is the paperwork for and I talked about, like, within these pages I talk about what this procedure was like, what this meeting was like, what my doctors were like. This is, I think of him as the dragon of waiting, because the day I got scoped, the GI doc was like, yeah, there's a mass in your rectum. We think it's probably cancer, but we'll know Thursday or Friday at the latest. So I waited and I waited. And I was really tired of waiting by the time I heard the news. But that's not really the only type of art in here, because that's not really the only type of processing I had to do. I let my tribe know through Facebook. So all of the pages that are flanked by faces, I did all these watercolor paintings of faces to include. And mostly collage, lots of this sort of, I don't know, magnetic poetry type storytelling. It's all very handwritten. It's all very I had a lot to work through in my head.
And would you say that working on this, would you say it's healing, empowering? How would you describe it?
All of the above, man. I needed this. I needed to do this for myself. There were so many little pieces of trauma that were just sort of left in my brain that would trip me up and ruin my day if I smelled something that reminded me of chemo, or if I, heard a noise that was a noise that I'd last heard during radiation month. Like, I needed something to put all of that outside of me, to give me a shield, so that this is the first thing I think of when I smell those smells or hear those sounds. This gives me the power over that trauma. I highly recommend it. My therapist was so delighted. She was like, I know art therapy exists, and I know narrative therapy exists and you've combined them, and that's really fucking powerful. It was a rough year. My little dog developed epilepsy the week that I was diagnosed, and it killed her the weekend of my final surgery. I had these conversations with my tumor that I storyboarded after I had them. They were like half asleep kind of conversations, and so being able to turn those storyboards into comic pages was very powerful and empowering. And paint stickers, just like aesthetically, the aesthetic product is a side effect of the what I needed to do. And there's a lot of it. Like there was a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of pages. I lost one of my good friends in September. My youngest clung to me like a koala the whole time. He was 6 when I was diagnosed, so this was a rough patch for him. And losing Dakota hurt. It wasn't unexpected, but it was still bad. It's just, so it's a heavy book, but it's got a happy ending. I survive.
Yes.
But some of these pages were really important. Really gave me a way to visualize all of it as art. You know, if you're gonna suffer and you can turn it into art, at least there's that silver lining. It's this is also on Amazon, but it's expensive. I don't know that I'll sell many copies, but it's because 290 pages full color means it's $75. Could put it on your coffee table.
Would you consider it to be your magnum opus?
I think I would. Possibly tied with the Oracle deck, because 118
that too.
pages is nothing, or paintings is, but it's a completely different application of creativity, right? One was for learning and the other was for healing. And I love that. It makes me feel like I chose right when I was 7 and I decided I needed visual art. Like these are the things that needed to exist for me, for maybe for other people. I don't know. And it's a Kindle ebook as well. So, and that one's cheap. So if there's people with a Kindle who want to read it, then that's available.
So,
and I got the few people who have read it. I've got like 22 people on Amazon who left reviews that just hugged my heart. Like they get it. These are people who have been through cancer themselves and could never share anything about that, or they watched their mother or their best friend or their brother go through it and never felt like they got to connect with the visceral part of the experience because they were protected from that. And they were like, this book gives me a connection to that person. Like it's been an honor that my healing could connect to other people's healing in a way that I had not that I'd hoped for but not expected.
are there any upcoming artists who you can suggest we keep an eye on?
Oh my. Um Hilariously, I don't have a lot of visual artists um in my crew. My kids are all visual artists. But I don't know if they'd want people's attention drawn to them just yet. I I still keep track of Aaron Humiston. He's an animator. When I went to school, it was for animation. Um, and he worked at Blue Sky and stuff. Aaron Humiston is he's every so often he posts little animation clips of things he's working on his YouTube channel. It's small, but it's really fun. ERIN, no, Red Pencil Entertainment.
Okay.
So he's brilliant. My best friend is a writer who just wrote her debut novel, and that is amazing.
What's
Speaking
her
of
name?
fantasy and world building,
What is her name?
Drea Talley, Talley, and her first book is Seer of the Strait. I just read it. It's fantastic. It's
Did
nice, again, to be around people whose creativity is well founded. Like developing the skills counts too.
Well, thank you so much for sharing these other artists, for sharing about Drea Talley. And my last question, are you ready?
Hmm.
My last question is, why is creativity important for you?
Why is creativity important for me? I think it gives voice to the parts of us that otherwise wouldn't be allowed to be heard. I think it gives us a connection to each other that would otherwise be empty. I think it's the only reason to be human is to create in some form, to make beautiful what was empty. I don't know any other way to be.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for having me. This has been an absolute pleasure.
And to the audience, those who tuned in, thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and please, again, share this so that other people may encounter the amazing and awesome creativity done by our guest today, Robin McFadden.
Hey, thank you.